a joint deep down in my heart. I'm waking up with your love from the start. I'm chasing the rainbow through the rain. I know it's gonna be a beautiful day.
If your life is falling apart and you feel no joy or happiness at all, then friends, this program is for you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee, Conversations of Friends of Faith to encourage and equip. I'm Kim Crabill, always delighted to have you joining us and for allowing me to come into your home for just a little bit to share with you some stories that I find so inspiring and stories that will lead us right to God and His hope in our lives. You know, many times we're going to face things and we don't know why and we don't understand it. But we look to other people who have gone through such stories for our hope and for our inspiration. And such is the story today. It is my honor and my pleasure to bring to you the author of Out of the Darkness, the Malika West story. Author, speaker, Laura West. Laura, hello, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You know, I said author and speaker, but you have podcasts. Tell us a little bit about the things that you do.
Yeah, well, I do. I also have a radio show, so I know all the work that goes into that. Here in Knoxville, Tennessee, it's called the Praise 90. It's on Praise 96.3, the Laura West and Friends Power Hour, where we gather every Tuesday night to make much of Jesus, because that's my goal, is not to interview people and make a big to-do about them, but to listen to their story and make a huge ordeal about Jesus. And I have God stories each week at Tuesday nights at 7 p.m.
Laura, you are a woman after my own heart. I have so many people that will say, well, you should interview this person. They have a huge following. Oh, you could. It's like, oh, friends,
Yeah.
You just don't understand. The people who really know me don't say that, but outsiders. And I think so many times because of our world, you know, it's all about numbers. It's all about how many, you know, you can grow the numbers by growing God, right?
Amen.
You know, that's not what we're about. I want to present the stories that represent God and His hope. And
That's
because
right.
I know that's what our world needs today. And that's exactly what I saw in your story. And you recall that once I read it, I reached out to you and I said, I just have tears streaming. It was such a beautiful story of so much hurt and pain and devastation, but yet so much empowered by love and grace and kindness and compassion. And so I wanted my friends, my audience, to meet you and Malika's story. And so let's just start right there, if that's okay.
Okay.
Tell us, who is Malika?
Malika, we had foster kids, me and my husband, to set the background. And so Malika came to us as a foster child, a very broken foster child. She was born blind, addicted to heroin. When she was 15 months old, her mother scalded her in a tub of hot water from the neck down. Malika received third-degree burns over 55% of her body. And in fact, Kim, when we went to meet her for the first time at the Shriners Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio, doctors told us she's not going to live. They said she's got less than a 5% chance. And I tell people all the time, you know what? Doctors are wonderful, but they don't know it all. And when that doctor in a lab coat gives you a diagnosis, the great physician in a long white robe can come right behind him and have a whole different outlook. And that's what happened in our life. Jesus came along and said, hey, she ain't going nowhere. And that's when the journey began of learning to take care of her, bringing her back to our home. We were in Virginia at that time. And I wish I could tell you when we got home, we lived happily ever after, but that's just not how life is, right? I mean, we have mountains and we have valleys. And,
Yes, well, Laura. Well, here's the thing, Laura. I know that everyone out there is saying, but you did bring her home.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that took such great compassion. You know, what? Why? You know, I mean, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thankful you did, but that you had to know the great sacrifice that. What? Why? I mean,
Well,
you knew what you were. You knew. You know what I'm trying to say. You knew.
yeah.
You knew that you may not have her long. You knew there could be a loss. Where did you find that in your heart? That's so huge to me.
You know, I got goosebumps now, you just asking that question, because I can relive it. Although she's 28 now, I go back and remember that time of that broken little baby laying there, burnt and skin grafts removed from her scalp and everywhere else, and thinking I was scared to death. But then I knew, it's like my husband said, we were interviewed the other day. He said, but we knew we had to, because who else was going to do it? No one
Yeah.
else was going to do it, you know? So he said that was his darkest moment, was bringing her home thinking, oh my gosh, what have we gotten into? And we did it. And it was only God. Kim, there's no way we could have survived and did what we did with this child if it wasn't for God's calling upon our life to do it.
Well, tell us what happened. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, first of all, you can't even bring a burn patient home till you prove you can take care of them. So that was quite an ordeal. John used all of his leave time for us to stay up there. We got on that Delta 747. That child, she was in pressure garment. She scratched and she screamed on that plane, blood everywhere. I can remember a man turning around and saying, her ears are probably popping, give her gum. And I thought, sir, she's got a lot more wrong with her than her ears popping right now. And when we got home, that's all she ever did. And especially if anybody other than me talked. Since she's blind, she grew real fond of me and my voice. And I kid and tell people, I don't know why, because I sound like Maud, right? And if you're not old, you don't know who Maud is. But I don't. I
Hey,
don't
no,
have
wait
that.
a minute. I know who she is, and I just
You
don't.
know. But you know, I thought I could talk and she'd put her hand to her eye and she'd stop crying. If John or my daughter talked, it was scratch and scream. So I couldn't leave the house with her. There was no way you get to Walmart, and as soon as the greeter said, welcome to Walmart, it was over, you know. And so we did. We called them to come get her. We said, we're done. Can't do this. We had 103 foster kids, all medically fragile, but this one I can't do. And they begged us not to. They said, we'll send mental health to your house. They did. They taught us some techniques. And all I can say is I'm so glad that God allows second chances and that he stayed with us and we persevered through that, because Malika's taught me a lot more than I've taught her over the years. I can promise you.
Mm. So where is she now?
She lives here with us. She's in her bedroom listening to music right now. That's her favorite thing to do. She graduated from Sevier County High School. That's another whole story we don't even have time to talk about, but she graduated from school there, just maxed out at 21. Just, you know, that kind of, because developmentally, Malika's about 7 or 8 years old. That's what amazes me about her. She's impacting this world for Jesus without a degree in psychology. She don't have a degree in Hebrew and Latin and all that. She just gets up and lets people see God all over her. That's all she does. And she doesn't even know that she's changing the world that she's in. She doesn't even realize it, you know, but she is.
It's just amazing to me, the entire story. Tell us about how long did that healing take? I mean, did you have other foster children at the time?
Yes, we did. We had 4 at home when we went to get her. And I can remember telling my husband, I think we need to take her home. And he said, I knew you were going to say that. And he said, what's one more? You know, but all of our kids, they weren't running around. They were all under 2 and they were in medical beds because they had feeding tubes and they had trachs and things of that nature. And I know that sounds bad, but they were actually easier to take care of, you know, because I wasn't going 100 directions. So we brought her back to our home and added one more to the bunch.
Yes. It's just an incredible story of how, you know, just even going even back, how did you get into the ministry of foster care? I think about that. You know, Laura, they say to me that if you come to my home and visit me for longer than 10 minutes, I cry when you leave. And I do. I get attached pretty easily. So, you know, how did that affect you, you know, bringing the children in and having to eventually release them?
You know, that's how we knew we were doing what God called us to do, because we hear that all the time. People just couldn't do that. And I always wanted to be a nurse and never went to nursing school. And yet here I was doing something nobody else wanted to do. And I loved it. And I was married to a man that didn't mind doing it. He changed feeding tubes and diapers and everything. It didn't faze him a bit. And it was just a fit for us. And then, of course, our church family, we had godly people around us. You know, when God calls you to do something, he'll place the pieces in place. And we had a good support system of people that would come to the house and help us. And so that's how we got into that. And that's how we survived that. And I miss it. I'm old now, you know, I'm heading towards 60. So I'm like, I'm getting too old now. I might put them down and forget where I left them, you know. So now, you know, God's called us a different direction, and we've been traveling and speaking for 20 years, sharing Malika's story. And that's where I'm supposed to be now. But we enjoyed our days of foster care. We really did.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it is such a calling. It's like nursing or being a physician or social worker or anything else, or mom. I mean, all of these are different callings on our lives that we accomplish through God's Spirit and his power at work within us. When you travel, what is the main thing that you want people to learn from your story, from Malika's story?
Well, I got two things. I want to bring them out of the darkness, which is why I titled that. So many people live in doom and gloom and in darkness, and we don't have to stay there. And then my second message is, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. It would appear on the surface, a broken child like this, who's blind, her body scarred. I mean, she's been through so much, is really broken. But I tell people, you can't be used by God until you are broken. That's what happens. That has to happen to all of us. And so, yes, she's been broken, but the master put her back together, and she shines brightly. So that's the two messages, to encourage people, to give them hope. And then here recently, God's shown us all about what it means to forgive somebody, you know, because her mother's back in the picture. So what do you do with that? You know,
I was going to ask you about that. What do you do with that?
Well, you either be the biggest hypocrite ever by going around for 20 years telling people to love one another, or you show God's grace and mercy. And when I look at the cross, what I see beside Jesus on that cross is me. And how could I possibly not forgive someone else? Her mother, when she first got in touch with me, I was scared. I was scared. It'd been 20 some years. What does she want? And I got on the phone, and what I heard was a broken, repentant soul who had given their life to Jesus, wasn't a drug addict anymore, actually serves in her church in Norfolk, Virginia. And all she wanted to do was say she was sorry. She had to say she was sorry. And it's never been an issue. She's never bothered us anymore. She's never done anything like that. And I tell my people when I'm out, what do we teach our whole life? We teach forgiveness, right? Yeah. So what are we going to do? If forgiving her doesn't mean saying it didn't happen. Of course it happened. That would be a lie, right? We're not living a lie. We're just saying, yes, it happened, but God forgives, so can we. And she's even got a brand new song she sings now, says, if Mama could see me now. And a beautiful song written by one of the singers in Triumphant Quartet. His wife and him sat down and penned this beautiful song that Malika sings when we're out speaking. And, you know, her mama did see her now. She sees what Malika's doing with her life, you know. So it's a miracle all the way around. That's why I say everybody needs to hear this story, because there's so much. There's miracles in this story. There's healing. There's forgiveness. It's impacting of everything, which is why we had to write the second book. We had to put the mama in this book, you know.
Right. Well, you know, and it speaks to everyone where they are about forgiveness and hope and healing in the deepest of darkness. I think we each, and I hope that my audience, our listeners that are listening today, will grab the books, because you find your own story in the midst of Malika's story and your story. You find the places where you are in darkness. You find the places where you need healing. But the most beautiful thing about all of it, I say one of the most beautiful things is that we do have a purpose, and it may not come packaged the way we expected it to. It may not be in the story in which we hoped it would be. You know, Malika probably, if she had had her wishes, she would be none of this would happen, and she'd be on the stages singing in a beautiful gown and can see our audience. But that's not the story that God chose for her. And thank God he sent her rescuers, you and your husband, to take her and to love her and to nurture her, to bring out this gift that she is. And it's a beautiful story. And it is your story, but what I want my audience to understand, it's their story too.
Right.
We
Yep.
find ourselves in that story.
Yep. Yep.
When you're talking about Malika's mom calling and you seeing the difference, the first thing that came to my mind was Joseph, and when brothers came before him, and he gave them, he could have just said no.
Yep.
But he brought them before them and he gave them time. They were speaking a different language, remember? And they
Yep.
didn't think that he could understand them. But he wanted to know if they had changed.
Yep.
Were they repentant? And so
right.
that's what I see in you. It's like you gave her the opportunity to show that she had met Jesus and that she was a different person. You didn't hold her hostage to what she had done in her past. And that's another whole new subject of this book.
Exactly.
And I love that.
Yep. And when I'm out speaking, I put a picture up of her mother standing beside the helicopter with Malika on the stretcher after she burned her. And she just kind of looks disgusted with her arms folded. And then I show the next picture where when God saves us, we're a new creature, right? A new creation. She doesn't even look like the same lady. The demeanor of her face is she's glowing. She has the presence of Christ in her face. And it's just mind-boggling to me and to my audience when I put those pictures up and they see it, And there's always tears because people can always, I tell them, I said, you get mad if somebody sits in your pew at church, We hold grudges for something silly like that. Yes. But you know what Malika said when I finally told Malika? So I let Malika sing on the phone to her mom without telling her it was her mom. And then a few weeks later, I decided to tell Malika who it was. And as I told her, because I told you she's like 7 years old mentally, I said, that was your mom you sang to. She wanted to call and tell you that she was sorry for burning you. Here's what Malika said. That had to be a hard call to make. She cared more about her mother having to make that phone call than all the years of what she's been through. I said, well, how does it make you feel? Do you forgive her? She said, yeah, I forgive her. And we moved on. That was it. Wow. Amazing. She has taught me so much, I'm telling you.
Well, she had to have lived around that though, Laura. I mean, you lived Jesus in front of her, and that again, that's the beauty of why I wanted to meet you and my audience to meet you, is because the Bible says that what we sow, we will reap.
Yeah.
And you were sowing into her this forgiveness and this love. What else could she be except that, because of you? And I just, I'll have two questions. One, if it's, one of the things that I always am leery of is making everything sound too happy, happy, happy. I know that because I don't want people to think, I think there's that we can somehow begin to believe that once we accept Christ and we're doing the right things, even in the hard things, God makes it easy, easy, easy. Well, that's not true, right? It takes a lot of hard work. So I always like to be real in situations that are really tough so that people will know what to do in their darkness and so they can come out of the darkness.
Right.
So two things, if you would think about that, is what is one of the darkest times that you faced, and then what was one of the giggle out loud moments? So would you mind sharing some of those with us?
And like I told you earlier, my husband's answer, that would be just the decision of bringing her home was his darkest time. What are we doing? But I remember one of the and there were lots of them, okay, because these surgeries were not easy. I can remember bringing her back from Ohio after she had to have her whole bottom end reconstructed. So she was going to have to lay on her belly for 3 months during the summer with staples until she healed. So when we got her here to the house, we had to stop at a rest area along the way in Kentucky for her to use the bathroom. So walking with her legs, with a wedge between her legs, trying to get her to the bathroom, people staring at us. It was horrible. Then when we got her here, trying to get her in the house, walking her to her bedroom, there were 4 ladies. I'll never forget them. 4 ladies from the church were here. They had made dinner and made meals for us, had the house clean and ready. and Malika's trying to make it, and we're holding her up, trying to make it to her bedroom. And as we look back on the carpet, there was blood everywhere. She had just bled all the way there. And that was a breaking point for me. And I can remember just putting her in the bed and laying down beside her and crying and saying, God, this is too much. But what do I do? I'm in the middle of it, you know? And no sooner than I thought that, I looked towards the living room, and all four of those ladies were on their hands and knees scrubbing our carpet. And I say, God places people right where you need them, when you need them, and says, you're not doing this alone, Laura. You've got help. We're gonna send in the we're gonna send in the reinforcers to help you. And he did that every single time. And like I said, there's multiple times I could tell you about that. And then God uses laughter, and laughter's
he
good
does.
like a that's what he tells us in Proverbs. Laughter is
Yes.
good like a medicine. And that girl has brought some laughter to this home. And just one of the many stories I can remember, being in a hospital waiting room in Cincinnati, many, many surgeries. The doctor said, this one's going to take 4 hours. I'm sitting in a waiting room with another lady. The phone rings and the lady answers. One of the nurses ladies answers and said, Miss West, the doctor needs to talk to you. It only been about 15 minutes. I thought, oh no. And I go to the phone. He's laughing. He said, Miss West, he said, listen, it's going to take a lot longer than we thought. And I was like, okay. He said, we were getting ready to put her to sleep. And she went, who let the dogs out? Who? He said, she's been singing, and we've been asking her to sing for the last half an hour. He said, so we ain't even started yet. So I went back to my seat, and that lady said, is everything okay? And I started telling her Malika's story, and she got to laughing. And every time another patient, family member would come in, she'd say, come sit over here, tell them your story. And we sat there for 4 hours, all of us in the waiting room, laughing and sharing stories. And I thought, that's joy. That's joy. Well, none of us were happy that our loved ones were in surgery, but yet Jesus gave us joy through laughter while we waited for them. And so she's done many things like that. Says things. She said that we were out in public one day that was an ugly kid, and all the parents were going to kill us, because she said their kid was ugly. And we're like, she's blind. She doesn't see anybody's kids, So we got lots of stories. A lot of them are in the book.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, and thank you for sharing some of those, because I think you're right. Laughter, the most organic medicine, isn't it? The Bible says to get through some of the toughest of times. And I think sometimes we forget, how important it is. And you know what, Laura, as a counselor, I know that many people feel guilty when they laugh during hard times.
Yep.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah.
That they feel guilty.
Yeah, they would have a fit at some of the stuff we've laughed at with Malika in this house. I mean, we used to joke and tell people that when we're mad, we rearrange the furniture just to punish her. And Malika laughs. She thinks it's funny, but people will look. I'm like, it's okay to laugh. Just like I say, when she gets to heaven, the first thing she sees will be Jesus. The second thing she sees is she's got a white mama. And sometimes they're hesitant to laugh, and then I give them permission. I'm like, it's okay to laugh, The first time I ever said that, Malika said, I already knew you were white. I said, who told you?
Oh my gosh. I just love it. I just love it. I love your story. I love everything. Laura, we've been talking so much about, what you've done for her. And I know you've hinted at this a couple of times, but I have to just ask you, what has she done for you?
Oh, man.
What if you had never met her? What is having her?
I can't imagine. Oh, I can't imagine that, because she's taught so much, so many things. In fact, I'm writing a second book now. It'll be a devotion a day on things Malika's taught me. And, but she's the main thing she's taught us is that you can love more and love better if you love with your heart and not with your eyes. That's what it's about. Don't look and judge things based on what we see. Look with your heart. See like Jesus sees, and you'll be able to appreciate things a whole lot better than we do. We take so much for granted. We wake up every morning, and most of us don't have to set an alarm, or we don't set it to see the sunrise. But man, what if you couldn't see? What if you couldn't see? What if you said, well, if I get my vision, I'll be happy? Well, she would have been miserable for 28 years then,
Yeah.
So we can't put stipulations on what'll make us happy. She's taught me that. You've got to find joy within your circumstances and where you are right now. Just like Paul said, learn to be content, whatever my circumstances are. So that's probably a huge one that she's taught me.
Absolutely. And the final question, is there a specific Bible verse, or is it just a combination of many? Or can you give, let's just say there's someone out there right now, and I do hope, and I know that everyone can order the book. But is there, let's just say there's someone out there and they really feel like they're sitting in the darkness. We don't want them to feel bad because someone else has been through more than what they have, because whatever we're going through, right?
Right,
So
right.
for whatever darkness someone may be going through, is there a Bible verse that you would give to them, or a special word just that you would give just to them today?
I love this. Has been so comforting to me when you're going through it, because you are going to go through it. You just said it. Everybody's story is different. Everybody's going through something. What brought me comfort, I think it's Psalms 56:8. He collects all of our tears in a bottle. And when I think about that, no tear that we've ever shed has ever gone to waste. I think about all the tears over the years. Yeah, we're smooth sailing right now with Malika, but it wasn't always like that. And he collects all of our tears. None of them ever go to waste. He cares. He really cares.
Mm. That's so beautiful. He really does.
Yeah.
Our world has made us think that he doesn't. The enemy tries to discourage us with thinking that he's abandoned us and left us, but he's a faithful, and he will never leave nor forsake us. He's
That's
always
right.
right there at a whisper. We just whisper and he's right there.
Yep.
Laura West, you are everything I wanted you to be and more.
Well, thank you.
Your story is so touching, so hopeful, so inspiring. I know, let me just tell you, I believe that this is going to be a movie one day. I really
I'll
do.
believe it with you. How about that?
Yeah.
We're two or three.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It sure needs to be, because everyone needs to be inspired by this. Thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, friends. Well, thank you so much for joining me for coffee. Gosh, it's just been a good few weeks of having some incredible guests on. But I will tell you what, nothing could ever be more encouraging than this story that you can read. Out of the Darkness, the Malika West story. We'll put all the information down there. You can grab it on Amazon and many other places, but order 2 copies and pass it around. And you better read it before it turns into a movie. So that when you go to see it, you'll already know, so that you could just sit there and enjoy it. What a story. Remember, you don't have to be in a perfect situation to have a purpose. God knows what he's doing. Just trust him, lean in, and let him show you the ways. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me for coffee today. And as I always say, there's been a great conversation that got started here today. Now you go out and continue the conversation. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, everybody.